Thank you to the BCA for this opportunity to share my thoughts as a result of my retirement. I want to thank the Sanghas of the Buddhist Temple of San Diego, the Southern District, and BCA. Because of you, my time as a BCA minister has been the most fulfilling time of my life. The BCA theme, Strength in Sangha, is an indication that the strength in Sangha demonstrate the truth of the Dharma. Don't we want to share this with others? The Eitai-kyo service focuses on the perpetual chanting of the sutras, so we can thank our ancestors for this opportunity to hear the Dharma. Since we have received this from others, we should be aware that it's our responsibility that young people in the future may also hear the Dharma. But our greatest challenge seems to be our dwindling membership and attendance. My talk provides suggestions for you to share the Dharma with family members and youth seekers who may want a guide to life and to happiness. Why is it that Lin-Manuel's play, Hamilton, is so popular? The cast is diverse and the lyrics are in rap. Hamilton is an updated appeal to modern audiences. We are using 13th century mythology for an American audience that is turning away from religion. Some people may be concerned if we don't maintain a strict interpretation of Shinnan's words. But think about this. How pure is Jodo Shinshu? 300 years after Shinran, Benyo presented Shin Buddhism in a way that was popular for the people of his time. We have two branches, Higashi and Nishi Honganji, which emphasize different aspects of Jodo Shinshu. Which Shinran or Renyo recognize are Buddhist churches with pews, Dharma school, organ music, hotel conferences, and Zoom. Yet the heart of Jodo Shinshu remains, the Nembutsu. Please join me in Gassho as I utter the words of Shinran. Solely saying the Tathagata's name constantly, one should respond with gratitude to the universal vow of great compassion. Namo Amida Butsu. We all know that our primary practice is voicing the Nembutsu. But to a new visitor, seeing members with palms together, bowing in front of a picture or statue of the Buddha and uttering foreign words can appear to be worshiping a deity. We can see the difficulty of introducing Shin Buddhism. In America, in the template of Christianity, Shin Buddhism has been misunderstood. Different sects of Buddhism are defined by their practice. If we encourage a new seeker or young member to voice the Nembutsu as a practice, what happens? If they voice the Nembutsu and they feel nothing, Namo Amida Butsu has no meaning. It is important to establish a meaningful experience of the Nembutsu. Since the 1970s, my background in spiritual psychology, vision quests, and body-mind disciplines have exposed me to effective methods of conveying deep spiritual meaning to those who are seeking truth. I have found two important methods that help people understand a new concept. One, use terminology that provides a familiar experience. Bodhisattva, Shinjin, Bao, other power, and Pure Land are not familiar terms to many. Each has to be explained. Most are complex. The second part of this is to provide a practice or method that leads to an experience of a concept. When we do something and repeat it, a concept becomes real. When we feel that it is effective, we are inspired to continue. These methods have helped to clarify the teachings. Let's look at other Buddhist traditions. 60 years ago, Zen Buddhism, meditation, mindfulness were thought to be exotic Eastern practices. Today, they're accepted methods of stress relief, health benefits, and efficiency techniques. When their benefits are highlighted, these practices are widely accepted. Shin Buddhism is now beginning to be noticed. More articles appear in Buddhist magazines. We need to let people know that Shin Buddhism is the largest school of Buddhism in Japan. It has influenced Japanese values, culture, and language. Why? It is popular among the everyday working people in Japan because of a simple practice that brings spirituality into ordinary life. The values and practices can resonate and benefit Americans who seek a spiritual path. What is a simple practice incorporated into our daily life that can change our view of life itself? How can we relate Shinnan's experience 800 years ago to our present situation? Let's have a short review of Shinnan. He was a 13th century Tendai monk who was frustrated after 20 years on Mount Hiei. He had the integrity to admit his own inability to follow the precepts to achieve spiritual fulfillment. However, he found and realized that even with his inability to control his ego, his life was showered with benefits. We know that he left Mount Hiei to follow Honen, but he, Honen, and others were defrocked in exile. So Shinnan lived and spread his thoughts among the lay people in the Ichiko and Kanto areas. Even when these writings are translated accurately, the essential message seems difficult to understand because they are metaphorical, told in words, concepts that are not familiar to younger Buddhists and non-Buddhists. Words such as bodhisattva, shinjin, vow, other power, and pure land all have to be explained. Fortunately, modern scholars and followers are able to provide interpretations that resonate with our contemporary lives. We will share these familiar words that relate to more difficult concepts. When the Buddha was enlightened, he realized that our reality is determined by how our mind sees the world. In the West, when you hear the word mind, it means the cognitive brain mind. But when the Buddha talks about mind, it includes the cognitive mind, body, the heart, and spirit. So in Buddhism, practice or physical activity is important. That is why ritual is so important. A concept has a deeper meaning and understanding when it's put into action. The Buddha taught that our discontent was caused by the desires of our ego. To control our desires, the monastic setting was most suitable. Limiting one's possessions to a robe, begging bowl, and a sleeping mat, one could easily concentrate on the essentials of life. Controlling the ego was initially intended for those who renounced everyday life. These practices become more of a challenge for ordinary people. We're struggling to provide food, clothing, shelter, education, entertainment for ourselves and for our family. Having a job or career takes an enormous amount of effort of the ego. So how do we diminish the ego when it's so important to survive? These practices are suitable for a monastic setting, but they have limits in our conventional world. However, these practices of meditation and mindfulness can help people balance their lives in our ordinary life. Some who have done these practices may have experienced the same frustration that Shinnan did. After 20 years in the monastery, Shinnan's deep integrity allowed him to admit his failure to control his ego. He left the monastery to follow Honen, but Shinnan's reading of the Pure Land Sutras revealed a different perspective from those of the past. In his writings in Jodo Shinshu, Shinnan notes, "Still the clouds and mists of greed and desire, anger and hatred, cover as always the sky of true and real Shinjin. But though the light of the sun is veiled by clouds and mists, beneath the clouds and mists, there is brightness, not dark." What an optimistic view of life. Shinnan realizes that even with the constant hindrances of our ego, as depicted by the clouds, our lives are bright, not dark. Shinnan continues, "When one realizes Shinjin, an awakening to truth, and attaining great joy, one immediately leaps crosswise, closing off the 5 evil courses." What happens when we leap crosswise? We change our perspective. We have an alternative view of the same situation from a different angle. Let's demonstrate this. Put up your hand to hide my face. Now, what happens when you might make a crosswise leap? Move sideways so that you can see my face. The view changes, or perspective changes. Shinran realized that we can experience the truth in this world simply by shifting our view. It wasn't necessary to control our ego. So how might we make this shift in our everyday life? We've been conditioned to be aware of problems that cause us harm. The news media presents more negative stories as our selective seeing is alert to that. Our society and economy are based on desire. Our commercial culture is based on please. Fortunately, Shinran tells us we don't have to eliminate all our ego desires. Clouds and mists remain. We can train our minds to see what has always been here. As we see the light beneath the clouds, our lives become brighter. Shinran continues his guidance. One is naturally brought to enter the stage of the definitely settled. Solely saying the Tathagata's name constantly, one should respond with gratitude to the universal vow of great compassion. Respond with gratitude. Shinran is telling us that we can be in a settled, harmonious state solely by voicing the Buddha's name in gratitude. As I said earlier, it is helpful to describe a familiar experience to relate a difficult concept. For those who are new to Shin, I have found that the most effective and efficient method of conveying the essence of saying the Buddha's name is to start with the practice of voicing gratitude in the words, thank you. The meaning, and more importantly, the experience of thank you doesn't have to be explained. I think every culture has an expression of gratitude. It connects us with another. It voices our acknowledgement in receiving a gift. And we do this even in the presence of our ego. Gratitude is the initial practice for ordinary people, for it brings the Buddha's teaching into ordinary life. Let me repeat that. Gratitude is the initial practice of ordinary people because it brings the Buddha's teachings into ordinary life. Thank you alerts us to the fundamental uniqueness of Shin practice. Thank you is a response to receiving. It is not a practice of achieving. The practice of Shin Buddhism is one of receiving, not achieving. And hearing is one of the modes of receiving. And we'll talk more about hearing later. We recognize that the present moment is possible because of what we have received from the efforts of others. This is what this Eitaikyo service is about. The practice is to cultivate our minds to shift from what we want to appreciate what we have received. It does not need to diminish or eliminate the ego. To simplify this idea, think of this process as shift from please, a desire for something I want, to thank you, to appreciate something I have. We begin to see that we have received a lot, so much already. The practice demonstrates the middle path. We still have wants and desires, but it gives us a proper perspective. We begin to feel the joy of life, even in negative situations. One of the requests I hear from BCA members is how can we explain Shin Buddhism in a short, concise, simple manner? This is not only to new seekers, but also to our adult children, who would be the ones to continue these Eitaikyo services. These two sentences have worked for me, not only with new seekers, but also with my younger relatives, who are of techno-Buddhist age. These words are, Shin Buddhism is about appreciating what I have to balance the desire for what I lack. It is a shift from please to thank you. It doesn't have any unfamiliar terms that have to be explained. It is enough to have a person think and see some benefits of Shin. And perhaps more importantly, it doesn't scare the person away with terminology that they don't understand. Gratitude is familiar and understandable on how it provides actual benefits and can later become a religious path. I think it is this type of response that will help newcomers become interested in Shin Buddhism. As an introduction, we need to promote the benefits of Shin. With this type of introduction, new seekers will return to listen and move into a deeper aspect of Shin. These methods have been successful in San Diego as we have increased our non-Japanese membership. For our Kiyashiki ceremony, 17 of 35 people, or half, were non-Nikkei. We have several Mexican-American families and non-Nikkei families in our Dharma school and junior YBA. One of our minister's assistants is Mexican-American and now gives Spanish language Dharma talks on our website. We have attracted Buddhists from other Buddhist sects. So this introductory method works. Again, solely saying the Buddha's name constantly, one should respond with gratitude. People begin to understand why we voice the Buddha's name so many times in services. It puts the Nembutsu in proper context. By saying thank you, we can associate saying the Buddha's name as an expression of gratitude, not a prayer. Now we will clarify in more detail the meaning of the Nembutsu and suggest non-traditional terms which new seekers may relate to. We see that the Buddha's name, Amida Buddha, is voiced Namo Amida Butsu and is known as the Nembutsu. The Nembutsu literally means to be mindful of the Buddha. And what does it mean to be mindful of the Buddha? Amida is the Japanese word that combines two Sanskrit words, Amitabha, immeasurable light, and Amitayus, infinite, limitless life. Thus, Amida Buddha represents light and life, two phenomena that comprise all known elements on this earth. Light and life are also expressed in the human terms of light wisdom and life compassion. As an introductory practice, gratitude or thank you can provide the correct sense of receiving and not of achieving. The Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, is much deeper than gratitude. Namo Amida Butsu is not a prayer, mantra, or technique. It's an experience that cannot be described easily. It may be said that it can be a deep spiritual experience, and it is also gratitude for ordinary life. Amida Buddha, light and life, wisdom and compassion, may be a little abstract to relate to. Traditionally, other power is often used for Amida Buddha in contrast to self-power. We might relate more easily to the experience of Amida Buddha by using the familiar terms effort of others. A Shin life of gratitude is to constantly realize that our present moment is the result of the effort of others. The effort of others goes beyond humans. It represents all life forms in history. Consider what is involved in presenting a meal. Farmers must raise vegetables and animals and prepare them for market, transporting them to suppliers, selling them to customers, preparing meals for consumption. And it also involves evolution, science, innovation, and organizations that are intricately connected to sustain us. Thus, thank you is an effective introduction to the experience of voicing Namo Amida Butsu. I'll give you an example of how I saw my achievement as a young person, and then later on how I saw it really as the effort of others. As some of you know, I was a dentist before becoming a Buddhist minister. I was so proud of achieving a degree from UCSF, a dental school, one of the top in the nation. And I felt that I had achieved it all by myself. I had studied hard, gotten good grades, and was accepted and graduated. However, when I look back on it, I realized that my mother had taken a full-time job from a part-time job at a children's clothing store. And I realized my father had worked hard all his life, working 7 days a week right after the war. Before the war, he had a greengrocery that he lost, and when he lost everything. When he got back, he worked as a clerk for someone else's store. So my family had worked hard, teachers had helped me, and this dental school didn't just appear. There were visionaries, scholars, academics who developed this dental school and other dentists who gave their time to teach. And so looking back, I see that all these things, all these efforts of others provided an education for me and made it possible for me to be a dentist. It was a little self-effort, but mostly the effort of others. All of us are here today because of the effort of others for our benefit. By voicing Namo Amida Butsu, we acknowledge that our lives have been supported by the efforts of others and the compassion of Amida Buddha. This is how we are mindful of the Buddha. We have introduced the familiar terms of thank you and the effort of others to convey traditional concepts. The second part of this process is to provide a practice that leads to an experience of a concept. Now, the voicing of a name may be a new experience for most Americans. The concept of receiving may seem incongruous to us because we're a society that places a high value in achievement. So it may take some time for us to accept this idea. To see how this works on a large scale, we might observe Japanese culture of always thinking of the other person, the me within the we, interdependence. We see gratitude infusing all aspects of life. Many of us are familiar with the Japanese terms arigatai, enryo, itadaku. These words foster harmony, respect, and concern for others in our thoughts and conduct. For many Americans, this concept of acknowledging what we receive is new. It may take a concentrated practice to become natural. We may have forgotten the universal process of long-term conscious practice that leads to an effortless naturalness. Driving a car, playing an instrument, cooking a meal, or working a computer all began with a concentrated determination to master. Therefore, a conscious daily practice of thank you can lead to a natural life of gratitude. We see what we are interested in. In America, selective seeing may be towards seeing the negative. We want to avoid bad things. Also, our whole economy is based on the desire for what we don't have. How might we develop a selective seeing toward gratitude? Traditionally, Shin Buddhism doesn't have a recommended practice. However, this practice provides a familiar experience to an unfamiliar concept. Voicing the Nembutsu, it shifts our view to see what is really around us. This practice has been effective for new seekers. It's actually the Eightfold Path, kind of in reverse order of how it's usually seen. In the morning, we might start out with a short meditation. Think of something that we could encounter that we would appreciate. Let's say a light switch. It takes some effort and mindfulness to keep that in mind. And when we do see a light switch, we turn it on and say thank you. And that changes our thought. And it really shifts our perspective. At the end of the day, we could reflect on how this light switch came to be and the effort of others that put all this electricity and light in our life. We can repeat this practice daily, maybe for a week until it becomes a habit. When it does become a habit, let's add another thing. Could be a water faucet. So during the day, we find two things to appreciate. And as that becomes a habit, we might add something else. A car when we start to drive, or a meal. We realize that every aspect of our lives are provided to us by the efforts of others. Our life gets brighter. This is the practice of our crosswise leap. Changing our perspective, we see life gets brighter. When this becomes a common habit, we add the words thank you, Namman Daos. For many of you who are familiar with the Nembutsu, you might just begin the practice with Namman Daos with a thought of gratitude. This is a practice of selectively seeing the benefits of life. But this can only happen if we do the practice. If we don't actually do something to embody it, it remains a concept, an idea with no experience of actual appreciation. However, like a new diet or exercise routine, we may become lax in our practice. But we can only benefit from it if we realize that thank you is only the first stage. What happens when something really negative or significant happens? Thank you may seem insignificant and insufficient to counter a situation where we might lose a loved one, or an angry attack on us, or a sudden tragedy. Realize that we are just ordinary people, not monks and nuns. So it is appropriate to feel human emotions of grief, sadness, anger. Allow yourself to experience the emotion fully. This is true in real life. The Nembutsu does not avoid negative experiences. It cushions the pain with compassion. It may take time to really experience something fully. Then we can move on to the next stage. These thoughts of mine are not an alternative to our usual traditional teachings. I propose this practice of gratitude as a first step introduction. Most of you listening are already past this initial stage and are living this life of gratitude. In the spirit of Eitaikyo, I suggest that this is an effective method of explaining Shin Buddhism to newcomers, and especially to our adult children who may not have returned after Dharma school and YBA. If this approach is of interest to you, you can go to the website of the Buddhist Temple of San Diego and review my Dharma talks and discussions and articles. I hope to have a book out that puts this all together. Let's review the practice of gratitude and the Nembutsu. This simple practice of thank you can lead to a deeper appreciation of the interdependent nature of all life. Saying thank you brings us to the heart of the experience of Namo Amida Butsu. As we become more comfortable with the habit of saying thank you, we add the Buddha's name, Namo Amida Butsu, or the shorter chant, Namanda. Our initial practice of thank you infuses Namo Amida Butsu with gratitude. Therefore, we have a deeper meaning and experience of Namanda. Let me repeat Shinnan's words. Solely saying the Tathagata's name constantly, one should respond with gratitude to the universal vow of great compassion. The voicing of the Nembutsu brings us into the spiritual realm. As maturing adults, we want to move beyond the feel-good level of Buddhism. The deeper spiritual aspects of thank you may not be realized until we encounter the three existential challenges of life. Only the spiritual realm can resolve these challenges fully. The practice of gratitude shifts our perspective. We begin to understand the deeper lessons of Shin Buddhism. We begin to view the stories, concepts, and mythology from a new perspective. The me within the we is part of the effort of others, of wisdom and compassion, of Amida Buddha. The experience of Namo Amida Butsu goes beyond gratitude. It touches all human experiences: interdependence, humility, respect, harmony, being affirmed and accepted, shinjin, feeling of joy. It is beyond words and concepts. Nembutsu is life itself. As we travel the Nembutsu journey, our life becomes brighter. Practicing gratitude for the ordinary things in life eventually awakens us to the reality that nothing is ordinary. All things can be considered spiritual. Dr. Taitetsu Uno speaks about deep hearing. It is how we perceive the world that determines what is sacred and spiritual. The Nembutsu practice of acceptance leads to a life of gratitude and joy. At the end of life, our access to the spiritual realm may depend on our spiritual practice. It is at this time that we might ask, please, let me have one more month, one more week, one more day. Or might we be able to say, thank you. Thank you for this last month. Thank you for this last week. Thank you for this last day. Namo Amida Butsu, Namandab, thank you, is the daily practice for ordinary people that leads to a life of gratitude that is filled with joy. Thank you, Namandab, Namo Amida Butsu.